And welcome back to another episode here on CBB Review Studio. Matt Mlodzinski, Ariel, Puterman, Dan Siegel here with you again today. We are doing our countdown of the top 100 teams in college basketball. On to teams number 40 through 31 today, guys. Just like the last episode, mostly, if not all, a power conference episode here. I do see one mid-major team, if you want to call them a mid-major, that we'll get to in this one. But other than that, it is power conference teams. Real quick, Ariel, now that we're in the top 40, how are we feeling about this next bunch?
Yeah, these are some great teams. A couple I think are borderline top 25, and I think that most of these teams, if not all, will be in that top 25 at one point this season. So that just shows, one, how balanced this season will be, and two, just these teams we're going through. There's a lot of good teams in here that I'm excited to talk about.
Yeah, I think we've clearly bumped up a tier. I think when I was doing my research here, fully evaluating this 40 through 31, this is when I really saw like these teams are good. And I think like 100 through 50 or 100 through 40, we had our thoughts, and every team had some upside, some downside. Like this is where I'm starting to really see the vision, like you said, like top 25, like fringe potential there.
Let's talk about the vision for team number 40. That is Indiana with head coach Darian DeVries. Tucker DeVries makes the way over as well. We all know the story there. Was he injured? Was he not? Well, he's going to be playing this season. That's all that matters. We will leave it at that here on CBB Review Studio. Tucker DeVries joins a talented Indiana squad with Darian. They've got some guys on this roster, guys. They've got a lot of senior presence. It's pretty much a whole upperclassman roster. You've got a guy in Trent Sisley that was a top 100 recruit, but that's pretty much the only one here of note. It is a team that's going to have a lot of upperclassmen, a lot of experience. And look, I think Darian DeVries is in for maybe a pretty good year one at Indiana. Dan, you're nodding your head yes. What do you think about this Hoosier squad as we look at them with their new head coach?
Yeah, no, I really like this squad. I think, well, for starters, when we're talking about Indiana, finally having a coach that is known for not screwing up his talent and being more of the maximizing, I guess, what you have. That he does have a lot, but that being the case is huge. I think another big thing we're going to have to get used to with Indiana, they were below 300 in 3-point rate. So like the percentage of your total field goal attempts that are 3-pointers. They did not shoot a lot of threes under Woodson or under Miller, but DeVries has the opposite reputation. They're going to shoot a lot of threes. Nick Dorn from Elon, Josiah Miles from North Florida, guys that won't be top players on this team, but they each averaged 15 points per game last season, and they could shoot the heck out of the rock. You talks about it. You have a star in Tucker DeVries. You have a do-it-all big man in Reed Bailey coming over from Davidson. I think we underrank these Hoosiers. I really like this team. I think you don't have Mike Woodson anymore, so it's no longer the case where, hey, look, they're talented, but we have to kind of give them a little bit of a bump in the rankings. Like this is a legit Indiana team that the only thing holding them back reputation-wise is the name on the front of their uniforms.
Fair enough. I'm wearing Indiana red right now. This is an Indiana shirt, but I'm staying in theme right now. It's actually interesting. Throughout the whole portal season, I was looking at their pickups, and I'm like, this is a good piece, but it wasn't like, wow, like this team's loaded. And then you look at the roster, and they've got a pass first guard in Connor Enright. They've got an elite defensive guard in Tane Connerway, who averaged 2.9 steals a game last year. Then you have a high volume 3-point shooter in Lamar Wilkerson, who shot, I think, 44% from 3 on 8 attempts a game. And then you have a do-it-all kind of wing in Tucker DeVries. You also have 2 guys off the bench who average 15 games. So they really fit all the categories of what you want in a good team. And everyone seems like they kind of know their role, which is really important. The one thing is they're just going to have to stay healthy. Tucker obviously missed most of last year. Was he actually hurt? I think that's a conversation we can have another time. And Wright missed a lot of time as well. So if they can stay healthy, then this is a really dangerous team and a really good Big Ten. A really interesting team to watch as well, just with all the new pieces.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing here with Indiana as we close and move on to the next is, look, this is not Mike Woodson's Indiana. It's easy to maybe treat this team as such, but this is Darian DeVries' Indiana. And just like that, when you look at this roster, Woodson, we might be talking to them around Team 40, but with DeVries, I mean, you could easily make the case that they're a top 30 team heading into the season. Let's move on, though, because we have another team that I'll let you guys get to first, and then I will share my opinion on SMU. So from Hoosier Red to Mustang Red, Ariel, we'll start with you this time. How do you view SMU in the ACC and in the country this season?
Yeah, I think they'll be good. I like their returning their starting backcourt. I think that's a very underrated thing in college basketball, with retention wise, just bringing back that backcourt, bring back two guys who will have the ball in their hands and know how to win. I also love the Pierre addition, Jaron Pierre from Jacksonville State. He was the fifth leading scorer in the country last year. Just a do-it-all guy and a guy who could really provide that boost. Front court and the wings are a little shaky. That's where I'm really worried. Matt, I know you disagree with me on that, but I'm just wondering who's going to step up. Is it going to be Igitolu, the center, the 7 foot too big? Is it going to be someone else? If one of those guys can step up, I absolutely buy into this team. I just need to see it first.
Yeah, Yugitolu had some really good moments last season, so I could definitely see that. I'm also a big fan of their point guard, Kevin Boopy Miller. He was hurt for, I think, some of last year, but super athletic. Like when he's on the court, the ball moves, and it just, like, the offense just has a better dynamic, a better flow than when he's off the court. One of those guys where it's very noticeable, the on-off splits. The shooting, like, they don't have a knockdown shooter per se. I'm not sure who the best shooter on this team is. Maybe it is Pierre, like you mentioned, from Jacksonville State. Sam Walters from Michigan, a guy who was a backup forward for that Michigan team that, you know, how they ran their front court with guys that were like playing like point center and pick and roll with 2 7-footers. Like Sam Walters was like kind of that guy off the bench that kind of helped that. So that's an underrated addition for Michigan, but I think the depth on this SMU team is a little bit concerning. And you're relying on a freshman class that's boomer bust. Like, they're good, but it's not an elite freshman class, and that's why it's like, if you want to rely on that, that's where I think the downside is here. But go ahead, Matt. I know you have a lot of things to say here.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just start with the biggest news first, and that's that I have SMU with a ceiling of the Elite Eight. I think this team can make the second weekend and even win a game in the second weekend. I'm just going based off this, right? Boopy Miller, to me, could have a Kemba Walker run in March. He's that type of player, right? Where he can just take over a game and make the shots and make them count. He could just do so much on the court. He's been in college basketball for a few years. He knows what it's all about, but he can take the big shots and make them. And I do believe Ariel and Yugitolu, I mean, to average 10 and 6 as a freshman, he had even better numbers during one stretch. I mean, what he could do as a sophomore, I think, could be outstanding. Between Miller, him, and Edwards, I think you have 3 guys right there. I think Corey Washington might not have a big drop-off from his production. I mean, he averaged 13.7 and 7.5 rebounds at Wichita State. I don't think American to the ACC is that big of an adjustment. And for a team that doesn't have a lot of depth, I think they're going to need to rely on him. So I really like that. And I love just how Sam Walters fits into this team, right? With a true big man down low, it gives Walters a stretch 4, a chance to really be a stretch 4. Like you guys have mentioned, though, SMU, it's going to come down to it can't just be Jaron Pierre off the bench, right? You've got to have Jaden Toombs. You got to have Billy White III. They're going to have to come in as freshmen and make this work. So there could be some growing pains with this team, and they've got to do enough to get to March. But I think if SMU gets in as a 10 seed, I wouldn't want to play them. I would not want to have to say, hey, we got to play Boopy Miller and Yugitolu. I just wouldn't want to. So that's me on SMU. We will move on to a team out of the Big Ten again. That's number 38. It's Washington. Look, I'm going to just toss this back to Ariel because, like, how I think SMU can go on a run, I know you got the same thoughts on the Huskies.
Yeah, I absolutely love this team. This is a top 25 team in the country, in my opinion, and it's absolutely loaded. I mean, you start with the 2 USC transfers, Wesley Yates and Desmond Claude. Wesley Yates, in my opinion, is a top 10 sophomore in the country, and I could even go as far as saying top 5. He was so good at USC last year, and they were bad, obviously, and I feel like his level of play was really not showcased just because of that, but he was phenomenal, and I think he'll take that step up. And Claude's a solid veteran who's a really great scorer. Then you bring in 2 mid-major conference player of the years in Kumari Peterson and Jacob Gnosovich from ETSU and from Lipscomb. Gnosovich is out for 3 months, but he should be back by conference play. So you start with those 2 really talented guys, and you add 2 player of the years. Then you add Hans Steinbach. You might not know who that is, but he's a guy from Germany, 6'11". This summer, he played in the U19 World Cup. He averaged 17 points a game, 13 rebounds, and 1.3 blocks per game. the depth on this team is crazy. The front end talent on this team is crazy. I think Danny Sprinkle's a really underrated coach. I think a lot of people might look a little negatively on him just based on how bad they were last year, but that team was great all Sabor, and then me, Dan, and Matt were starting as well. So now that he'll have a lot more talent on the team, I think he'll really shine. So I'm all in on this team. I think that they're going to be a top 25 team. We have them ranked as the 11th team in the Big Ten. I'm going to say they're going to finish top 5. That's my bold prediction. I'm super high on this Washington team.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I think we're going to see a lot more in that offense. It's not going to be predicated around one guy and just creating post-up opportunities for him. That's literally what Washington was. And I know like people look negatively on Danny Sprinkle. I give him a little bit of credit for even being able to let Great Osabor like have a decent year with like the roster that they had. I think Ognacevic getting him back will be huge. You kind of went through the whole roster like the USC duo and Peterson from USC. That those three guys I just mentioned in the backcourt combined 50 points per game at their respective schools last year. The thing about Danny Sprinkle and his weakness, it's been on the defensive end. You look at Torvik, Washington does project, I think, in the top 15 offensively, but 97th on defense. Last year, for context, they were 128th on defense. So if we're really evaluating this team from last year to this year, we're going to expect like minor improvements on the defensive ends and then major improvements on the offensive end. And it's a matter of like how much the improvement is, because we know they're going to be better. Are they going to be leaps and bounds better? Are they just going to be better? We'll see. I think it's fair to be a little bit skeptical and put them at 38, but I see Ariel's vision as well.
Yeah, the biggest thing I'll say is I think Washington improved a lot from last season, and they've got the type of non-conference slate where they could go into the Big Ten with a very good record. I mean, you look at Baylor, sure, that's going to be difficult, but at Washington State, Nevada, a possible matchup of Colorado or San Francisco, and Utah, I believe I might have put that there by accident while I was editing yours because Utah is in the Big Ten. So that is my bet, Ariel. I'm just reading off what I have down here. But regardless, the other games that they have, I mean, this is not a challenging non-conference. If you can get a win at Baylor, it's a big game for your March Madness resume. And then you look at the rest of the games, and I mean, all winnable games. So, I mean, we could talk about a Washington team being undefeated in Big Ten play. So I definitely am on board with the Huskies as well. Let's move on to the Commodores of Vanderbilt, though. Number 37, I'm going to toss this back to Dan. This was George who wrote it. Look, Mark Byington, he had them back to the NCAA tournament. Do we think that they're going to be back there? Do we think they're even going to be better this season?
I think they'll be back there. I think when I look at this roster, they have a legitimate 10, 11 even guys that are very playable, guys that I could see potentially projecting as starters. I really don't know how the rotation shapes out, and with some coaches, that would worry me because I wouldn't necessarily trust them to really maximize that situation. With Mark Byington, I think that's more of an opportunity than a downside, the fact that he has so many options, and I think he could kind of mix and match lineups depending on the night, depending on the opponent. So we'll see there. Of course, there's a lot of injury concern throughout this roster, so it's good that the depth is there. But I do think they definitely downgraded as far as backcourt is concerned, going from Jason Edwards, AJ Hoggard to Duke Miles, Frankie Collins. I think that's a little bit of a downgrade there. I think they're a tournament team. I think they're a bubble team. But if I were to project right now, probably like on the inside of the bubble. So pretty much 37th in the country.
I'll add that Frankie Collins and Duke Miles have already played 9 years of college basketball together. Not together, just combined, which is pretty crazy considering back in the day you would only be allowed to play 8 seasons combined. So going into year 10 and 11 combined for that is pretty crazy. But obviously having a lot of experience is a good thing in college basketball. I like the Tylers on this team. In the exhibition game, they started 3 Tylers, which I think has to be a record. But yeah. Tyler Nickel and Tyler Harris, both of their jobs are just to catch the ball and shoot the ball. I think they probably will combine to dribble the ball under 20 times this season, but they're going to pull from 3 and they're going to hit threes. And I love guys like that. And you want those guys on your team. So the fact they have 2 of those guys is really important. I think their front court's pretty solid. McLaughlin's obviously a great player. I think their floor is pretty high. Their ceiling's a little bit lower than some of these other teams like Washington and SMU and Indiana. But I think that their floor is good enough that they're going to be a top 35 to 40 team like we have them projected.
Yeah, I just think they're going to have to stay healthy, and they're going to have to find a way to replace Jason Edwards, right? Those are the biggest two things. Like, they're just going to have to stay healthy, and they're going to have to replace, their star from last year. Like, if Vanderbilt can do both of that, I think they're a team to watch. I think they're a team that can do well in the SEC, and they can make it back to March Madness. I'm going to be honest. I don't think they're as talented as Indiana, SMU, or Washington, but I still think that the Commodores are a top 40 team, right? Like we deserve to be talking about them, but I think the previous three teams we talked about are better. But with that, look, there's another team out of the SEC I want to talk about, and that is Texas A&M. By the way, I do want to correct myself too. Utah is not in the Big Ten; they're in the Big 12.
Yeah.
I had like the biggest brain fart here, and neither of you guys corrected me, so that is on you.
I thought you said that, but then I was like, you probably know what you're talking
Coverage
about.
realignment's confusing. Sometimes I forget that too. But
I'm just like, I forget. I'm like, who knows? Like, maybe I moved Utah to the Big Ten in my college football like dynasty. Like, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. Like, for all I know, these are all Big East teams, and I'll just run with that. We got Texas A&M at number 36. Look, I talked about the Aggies. I was big on SMU. I'm pretty big on Texas A&M too, right? I mean, this is a talented Texas A&M team. Mackenzie Mbako is maybe going to be the star. We talked about Indiana earlier. This was a player that they lost, and he's now going to be an Aggie. You've got a team that features Pop Isaacs, Marcus Hill from NC State in the backcourt. I mean, that alone is going to make for a fun backcourt. Rylan Griffin potentially starting at the 3, and then you got Federico at the 5. Biggest thing for me is these are names. This is a roster filled with college basketball names that if you follow college basketball, you know all of these guys.
Mm-hmm.
And my biggest concern, guys, is that good or bad for Texas A&M in year one of Bucky McMillan, right? Year one of coaching a power conference team. Do you think that he's going to be able to do it with guys like this that are going to want shots, that are going to want the limelight? I think it's a challenge. I also, side note, don't know if they have the three-point shooting to really do Bucky ball the way it needs to be done. But answer those questions for me. Ariel, you go first.
Yeah, like you said, this is a team with a lot of names that you've probably heard of. Mbako, Pop Isaacs, Rylan Griffin, and then some of those mid-major guys as well. I feel like a lot of these guys are people that we know have high potential, but they're just a little bit shy of hitting that. And we came into last year being like, are they going to hit it this year? And they didn't. Pop Isaacs obviously missed a lot of time, but Mbako, he definitely took a step up last year, but it wasn't like this guy is going to be an All-American one day. This guy's going to be an All-Big Ten player one day. And Rylan Griffin obviously took a huge step down. So can they do that here? I think that's the big question. Also, Buckyball is such an interesting form of college basketball, and it's really not done at any other level. And it obviously worked at the mid-major level. Is it going to work in the SEC level? I like to say yes, but you need these guys to buy in. It's a lot of not taking off plays after you score, immediately pressing, being in shape, having good conditioning. If they can buy into that, then I think that it will absolutely work. But, that's a big ask, which will make this really interesting. I think this is such an interesting team, and I'm definitely going to keep track of this team all season long.
Yeah, I couldn't be more thrilled that Buckyball is at the power conference level. I couldn't be more thrilled. It's going to get a more national stage. I like when things like this are like these little niche mid-major things that people like us will always follow, but now that it's going to be more popularized, I think that's great. I think he does have guys like these guys are high volume 3-point shooting guys, but notice how I said volume and not efficiency. Like that's what worries me. I will say Jakari Lane, the North Alabama transfer at point guard, is a very, very needed piece. Just a very good ball control guy. He averaged 4 assists per game. He's a guy that I think fits the system well. There's the potential that this goes poorly. The SEC, obviously a great conference. They only win like 4 or 5 conference games or something like that. And even if that happens, I'm not out on Buckyball in the SEC. Like we have to give it more than 1 year. But I think you talked about Vanderbilt having the most downside of these teams. I think Texas A&M is the most downside of these teams that we talked about, the first 5.
I don't think there's anyone in the country that's more of a yell at your TV guy than Pop Isaacs, just because any shot that he sees, he'll take, and most of the time it's not the right shot, but he feels confident. It goes in sometimes, so you can't blame him.
It could work in this system. Look, I agree with you guys. I think there's talented players on this roster, but I just don't know how it's going to work together. But hey, Bucky McMillan, one of the better coaching minds in college basketball. Maybe he can be the guy to make it work. Let's go from Texas A&M straight to Texas. The Longhorns in at number 35. Ariel, I've been going to you first a lot, but I want to again because you wrote this one. A Texas Longhorn team with, of course, Sean Miller now coaching. Xavier fans are upset about this. If you're a Musketeer fan for some reason watching this episode, just tune us out for the next couple of minutes. If you're anyone else, learn about Texas because they've been one of the most disappointing programs over the past handful of years, but maybe, Ariel, this is the year that the Longhorns figure it out. Do they?
We'll see. I want to ask you guys this question, though, before, because I was kind of debating this back and forth. Between them and A&M, which team do you like more?
Longhorns, but I'll tell you why after you go.
I think Texas has a more succinct lineup. It just looks like it'll click more when you look at it on paper.
Yeah, I'm leaning that, but I've been going back and forth. The thing I like is that they kept Tremont Mark and Jordan Pope. Anytime a new coach can retain players of that level, especially with that experience, I think that says a lot about a coach. And both were obviously pretty solid last year. Really love Dalen Swain too. I think he's super underrated, especially on the defensive end. He's super lengthy, 6'8". I think he'll be really important for that team. And if he can stay on the court, he can be a game changer. I hate their bench, honestly. I'm really worried about that. I'm really relying on their experience to be that good. I think their floor is pretty good. Their ceiling's pretty meh. Like, I can't see this team making it past the Sweet 16, but I think that they'll be around the top 25 in this area most of the season.
Yeah, I think you understated it, though. Like, for a head coach and a good head coach at that, to be able to go into a new school and get, like, 3 key players. A lot of returning head coaches aren't getting that. And pretty much every new head coach has to bring in an entirely new roster through the transfer portal. This guy is coming in. He's got Jordan Pope, who leads the way, like 3-level scorer, averaged 11 per game. I think that number increases. You got Mark. You got Chendall Weaver, who you didn't mention. That is huge.
I do not like Chendall Weaver.
You don't like Chendall Weaver?
He's like the number one, like 4 fouls and 8 minutes guy of all time.
Well, you got those guys. You got Cam Heide from Purdue. You got Simeon Welcher from St. John's. They played decent roles for good teams and great coaches. And like, I could definitely like at least get behind like the fact that they have a super high floor for a first year head coach, but I think the ceiling is higher than you stated. I think it all comes together, and they just have a solid 6-7 guys. So didn't even do that one on purpose.
Look, I will just say that in the same reason SMU, I like them. Like, I got to side with Texas, right? If I'm being fair, in an episode with many teams from Texas, if I'm going to say one team can make a run because they bring their backcourt back, I got to stick with Texas. I don't think their starting center spot is nearly as talented as SMU has, but their backcourt is pretty much just as good, right? Like, I think this is one of the better backcourts in the SEC, a loaded SEC. Texas is going to be fine. So I do think that Texas is better than A&M if we're making that comparison. Let's move out to the West Coast. Number 34, San Diego State. San Diego State, the Aztecs here at number 34. Dan, you're a West Coast guy. This is a San Diego team that loses Nick Boyd. And other than that, I don't really think they lose all that much. I think that a lot of people have been high on San Diego State. Probably deserve to be in the top 25. Look, Miles Byrd, I mean, he's going to be a star this season for them. You got Reese Dixon Waters back after he missed last year. You've got Magoon Guath, one of the better just overall defensive players in the country. I mean, this is just a San Diego State team that is loaded. We already know what they can do, and it just feels like they're going to do it at a high rate this season. And I could see San Diego State going on another deep run this year. Do you agree, Dan?
Totally. I think there's a very low chance that San Diego State is bad for starters. You got Brian Dutcher. You got like your starting 5 is pretty much like entirely returning guys, at least as far as I see it. Guath was in high demand. Like, he's a clear breakout candidate offensively as well. It's hard to imagine guards, Miles Byrd, Reese Waters, like they probably demanded a lot of attention if they were to hit the portal as well. The thing is, off the bench, like the only downside I see is I didn't love the transfers they brought in, which, again, like a team like San Diego State, you don't need the transfers as much as a lot, like pretty much every other team in the country. But like Latrell Davis, San Diego State, was not even the best player, and San Diego State sucked. San Jose State came from San Jose State. Was not the best player there. San Jose State sucked. He can shoot it though, so there's that. Sean Newman, a guy from Louisiana Tech. I don't love him either. So like he could have done a little more in the portal, but man, like their player retention works, especially early in the year. Like if you want a team to buy high on early in the year, San Diego State continuity is key there.
Yeah, I get your point about the bench. I think if they run 8, then they'll be fine because I think Sean Newman was really underrated pickup. He was 3rd in the country in assists per game last year at Louisiana Tech. Then you got Pharaoh Compton, who's top 5 recruit in San Diego State history. Then you got Miles Heide, who has good size, shot the ball pretty well last year, and he's a decent plug-and-play guy. But, man, this defense is ridiculous. I mean, you got Miles Bird, who's a top 10 defender in the country. You got Magoon Gwath, who averaged 2.5 blocks per game as a freshman. I mean, the sky's the limit. He was really picking it up and going into the next gear before he got hurt late in the season. You got Reese Waters back, who was 2nd leading scorer on the team 2 years ago. He's a plus defender. BJ Davis is back. He's a plus defender. I just don't see any weak spots in this team defensively. Obviously, they're going to have to score the ball, and that's the big if. But, man, I feel so bad for the rest of the Mountain West because dealing with that every night is just not going to be fun. And I think that's going to take them far in the tournament as well, just because teams aren't going to be ready to prepare against a team that just has no weak spots on defense. They can't pick on a guy, and they're really going to be put in the pressure and really dominate in that sense.
At San Diego State for you, they're going to be one of the best defensive teams. They're going to be able to score the ball when they need to. They are going to be a team that you do not want to play in March. How about a team, though, that you used to not want to play in March for the same reasons, and that is Virginia, unless, of course, that unfortunately, Dan, you were one of those teams that obviously you're a Virginia fan, so unfortunate for you. Virginia also – some teams did because often, you would get beat in the first round. Not trying to say anything. And if you didn't get beat in the first round, you would just lose to Syracuse in the Elite Eight on the trip to the Final Four. So
I think you're forgetting one very important year that pretty much defined the entire Tony Bennett era. But yeah, I think speaking of which, like the thing that people are going to have to get used to is the fact that Ryan Odom, Virginia is going to be just a completely different identity than Tony Bennett, Virginia was. And you just the only common ground here is that they're both like good coaches, and they're both like kind of preach defense too, but it's going to be totally different. Like a lot of, I'm guessing a lot of like press Virginia type concepts is what they're going to want. They're very deep. They're going to play 10 guys. I really like the roster construction with Virginia. You got a star in Malik Thomas from San Francisco. There's a very low chance that he's not good. Like I think he's almost a lock to be a very good ACC player. You got your 2 international guys, Johan Grunlow and Tice DeRitter, guys that, in my opinion, probably should not be playing college basketball after playing multiple years of experience overseas. But because it's on my favorite team, I'm not going to complain. And then you got your point guard in what's his name, the BYU kid. Dalen Hall, yeah. And then you got shooters. So pretty much, like, I really like the way this roster kind of constructs together. I think you got a little bit of everything. And for Ryan Odom in his first year, coming from the transfer portal era, like he constructed a roster that makes a lot of sense together. And that's what I really like about Virginia.
Yeah, I think you hit that hammer on the head with experience. Experience is so important in college basketball. Unless you're a Duke team that has just like generational freshmen, then you're going to be so much better if you do have that experience. And that's what this team has. Even their freshmen, which the overseas guys, those guys have a ton of experience. So you bring in a system of guys who know what it takes to win in college basketball, who know their roles at this point in time, and who played for winning teams, like you mentioned, BYU, San Francisco. Toledo was pretty solid. You have a bunch of those guys, UC Irvine as well. Those guys are winners, and Ryan Odom's obviously a winner. I think that's going to all work out really well.
Yeah, maybe it's just a lack of star power here is my only concern. Like I want it to work out for Ryan Odom at Virginia. I like the roster construction. I agree with you there, Dan. I'm excited to see who steps up, right? Because obviously you look at the numbers Sam Lewis and Malik Thomas had, but they're not going to do that in the ACC. So I'm excited to see if one of them is, like maybe Malik Thomas is going to do that in the ACC, Or do they go to one of the international guys? Or, is it just someone else that we're not even talking about that steps up off the bench? Like, there's a lot of possibilities here. So I think that's fun. I do have one question for you, Dan. And I'm not even trying to say anything by this or be funny, but is it weird for Virginia fans that Ryan Odom is now the coach at Virginia?
Yes. Of course, there's the full circle thing for those of you that don't know. He was the head coach at UMBC when they beat Virginia. But, it's also, there's the element of Tony Bennett not being the head coach, which is weird in itself. But also, it makes a lot of sense. This was as soon as Tony Bennett retired and, the shock of that news wore off, the obvious implication was, Ryan Odom's the heavy front runner because of his Virginia ties and his, the way he carries himself makes a lot of sense to be the guy that takes over for Tony Bennett. So it's weird. It'll take a lot of getting used to for non-UVA fans and UVA fans for sure.
It'll be fun. We got 2 more teams today on this episode. We're running a little bit late, so we'll try to get through these a little bit quicker. Number 32 is Baylor. Ariel, you wrote about the Bears. You talk about all these coaches retiring. They still got Scott Drew.
Yeah, I think no team represents how crazy the transfer portal is than this Baylor team. I mean, they lost everyone from last year, and you see a lot of teams turn over completely, but it's usually either just a coach who's not good or a coach that gets fired. You never see an established Hall of Fame level coach lose his entire roster, both to the portal and for graduation. One guy I really love is the freshman Yesufu. I think he's a top 5 pick in the draft, and Baylor obviously has their one guy every year who's just a stud, so I think he's going to be that. And I'm just impressed with the depth that they have. When you build a new roster, they have a bunch of guys who average double digits for their teams. I'm a little bit lower on this team. I think they're probably closer to the back end of the top 40 than 32, but I still think they're going to be solid. I mean, Scott Drew has such a good floor, and the last couple seasons been a little bit down without Tang and Jackus, the FAU coach, and obviously K-State coach, but they'll still be a solid team nonetheless.
No Jocelyn Bodo love in your little statement?
I'm a little worried about his role in the team. I mean, he'll rebound, he'll grab, he'll block shots, but I don't think it's the best role for him just with this roster construction, but it'll be fun to see him in the Big 12, especially against my Kansas Jayhawks.
It's a weird fit. I agree. That's definitely something I circled. I was so surprised that Baylor was not an elite offensive team last year, headed into the year. I thought they were a surefire pick to just be lighting it up from 3, and they were just not necessarily doing that, and that's weird. Obviously, there's very little roster continuity, so you can't really say that as far as any implications this year. I think the team will go as Yesufu goes. You mentioned, I agree with that pick, that take of him potentially being a top 5 pick. You got a few high volume scores from bad teams. Actually, you got a lot of that. You got Michael Tajaj from Oregon State. You got the Wyoming kid Agbeam. So those are a few similar situations off the bench as well. I really wonder how that fits. Scott Drew is a great coach. He maximizes his talent. I don't see Baylor being bad, but also you got the lack of a lead guard. And I think for Baylor teams, whenever you don't have that, that's really what Scott Drew has made his living on. And I don't necessarily see that with this team. So those are my concerns. I think we'll see kind of similar Baylor performance to last year in a different way, but the same result.
I think we need to look at Michael Raytage seriously, because this is a guy that, Oregon State was not good, but he had 29 points in their win over Gonzaga. He had a double-double with 20 points in their 3-point loss to Oregon last season. So against the best competition, which Oregon State does not go up against much, he had some pretty big games. So I think that even on this roster, where there's going to be other guys, it's not just going to be him. I think he still looks like the number 1 scorer on this team, in my opinion. And I think that he's a leader. And with a star freshman there, it's going to be interesting there to see how they play alongside each other.
Yeah, I think they'll be good with Ratai and Yesufu.
Yeah, Ratai. It's one of the, I hate these names.
We both said it wrong.
And I know him too. I'm literally I promise I know him. And I'm just it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter sometimes. Let's move on to number 31. One last team to talk about today. I'll talk quick about USC. The biggest thing I have to say about them is their height, right? I wrote a big thing about their height. We do a stat projection and everything. And if you take their 5'11" point guard out of the equation, This team pretty much averages roughly about 6'8", 210 pounds, which is like an average of Jason Tatum, right? It pretty much, they're about a little bit under 6'8", 209. Jason Tatum is listed at 6'8", 210. Of course, that takes out their 5'11" point guard, so obviously it would go down to about 6'7" without him. But just to get my point across, guys, and these are good players as well, but Rodney Rice and Chad Baker-Mazara on the wing, I mean, that's 6'5" and 6'7" on the wing. Power forward, you might start Terrence Williams the second. He's 6'7", 235, so a beefy guy. And then you got Jacob Kofi at center. But off the bench, I mean, Ezra Alsar, 6'9", 253. Amarian Dickerson, 6'7", 197. Ryan Cornish, he's a big guard from Dartmouth at 6'5". And then you've got Gabe Dines, a 7'5" guy from Youngstown State. And then Jaden Brownell, 6'10" from Samford. You know, you got a couple other 6'5" guys as well who might see time. And then plus, if Elijah Arenas, you know, what's going on with that? He's 6'6" down there as well, but he's going to miss some time. So when you look at this team, I mean, just matchup nightmare. But I want to just talk a little bit further real quick. Gabe Dines, 3.1 blocks per game at Youngstown State. One of the best defensive rim protectors in the country, right? But did you know that he did not win Defensive Player of the Year in the Horizon League? Do you guys know who won that?
I don't know. That's an Ariel question.
Well, it's Amarian Dickerson. They both transferred to USC.
I figured it was one of the Robert Morris guys.
So literally, you look at a USC team that features arguably the two best defensive players in the Horizon League, right? Like, I don't care what league it is. When you can get a guy who blocked 3 shots per game and a guy in Dickerson who blocked 2.3 blocks per game at 6'7", 197. I mean, this team is going to be a matchup nightmare. 1 through 5, 6 through 10, it doesn't matter. I'm all in on USC. But, and I'll leave this up to you guys after I've talked a bit, because I said I'd be quick, but I wasn't, because I just love this Trojans team. Is Eric Musselman going to be able to figure out how many minutes these guys get? Because I see a lot of talent, and I don't know how he cuts minutes down.
Yeah, Ariel, you can go ahead here.
Yeah, I'm a little worried about that, just because you have so many guys who want the ball. You know, you got Jordan Marsh, we got Asar, who was like very empty calorie last year on that Utah team. You got Dickerson, you got Cornish, who averaged 17 points a game. Then you got CBM, you got Terrence Williams, you got Rodney Rice. Just like, there's only one ball on who's going to be the guy that's giving them the ball and who's going to be the guy taking the shots. And I think there's one guy who could tie this team together, and that's Elijah Arenas, who unfortunately doesn't look like he's going to play this year. There might be hope towards the end of the season, but I think this team was built around him. Not directly, but the team perfectly fits what he does and how he could benefit the team. Not having him, it just feels like they're missing that guy, which I'm a little worried about. But Matt, as you said, the talent's there. On paper, this team's really, really tall, got good size. Defensively, they're going to be really tough to match up with, and they have the depth. It just, who's going to tie this team together? Can Marsh kind of take that role? Can Rodney Rice do that? We didn't really see that last year because Gillespie was so good for Maryland. I'm just wondering who that's going to be for them. And I think Musk can find that answer, but hopefully sooner than later.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have said a lot on USC. There's not much I want to add, but the way I see it, like my first thought when I looked at this team is that Musselman basically saw everything that went wrong last year and really tried to not overcompensate, but really tried to fix it with this year's roster. I think number one, it was what a lot of people in the industry like to call a mid-major all-star team. And they ended up getting a lot of power conference guys. So that's number one. Number two, defense in the front court, not athletic, not rebounding. And you guys have talked about how they have 100% turned that narrative around. So that's I applaud Eric Musselman for that, just completely saying this is what went wrong, this is how we're going to fix it, and then executing it. So they totally deserve the boost in the ranking from were they below 500 last year when all was said and done? Yeah, it went really poorly.
Yeah. Musselman, by the way, has had 2 straight seasons below 500. His last season at Arkansas, first season at USC. So kind of not like a make or break year. I think we all still think he's one of the best coaches in the game, but I think he's went down a little bit in favor, right? We've seen he's not perfect. The whole must bust saga, it's not as fun as it maybe used to be because he hasn't been winning as much. So we'll see what he can do with USC this season. Guys, it was a longer episode, but thanks for all those who stayed along for the ride and got to see these latest 10 teams in our countdown. Still 30 more teams to get to, so stay with us the rest of the offseason. And, of course, we will talk to you next time as we continue to count down until college basketball returns.